plan, and then we'll open it up for the bigger discussion with the crowd.
All right, Yvette just pushed us live, so people are coming in now.
Okay, perfect.
Do we get started now?
Usually takes about a minute or so for everybody to roll in.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We have a very full calendar. I know there's been a lot of exciting events that you all will want to talk about. I'd like to begin by just going over a couple quick updates if you were not aware of them. And then we have two short presentations that we'd like to give you about two initiatives. I do not believe the mayor is able to participate today due to some conflicts that he had in his schedule. So I do apologize if he is unable to join us. I know he was very interested in everything that's been going on. If you were not paying attention to the City Commission last week on Earth Day, April 22nd, we released two of the mayor's initiatives. The first one was the Stormwater Master Plan, something that we've been talking about for more than 2 years and working on. So that is out and available on the city's website if you want to look at it. We also have a series of public meetings that we're doing to help to explain what the master plan recommends and how we came up with those recommendations. So you can look on the city's website at Stormwater Master Plan, and it will give you the dates on it, but also just for your awareness, we had one last night. There's another one this Thursday, April 29th, on Tuesday, May 11th, and then on Wednesday, May 12th. And all of those will be virtual. The one on May 11th will also be in person. So please get involved and learn about the Stormwater Master Plan and how we move forward. The second thing we released, and we'll be doing a short presentation on it, was in a couple minutes, is the greenhouse gas reduction plan. I think everybody here has been very, very involved with discussions about how we're going to get to carbon neutral. And so we did release the draft plan, which is out for the public to review and to comment on. And I'll hold off discussions of that till we get to the presentation. The last thing is just to make sure you're aware that we passed two ordinances on first reading. The first one was the Building Efficiency 305 program that we've been talking about. And the second was an update to the fertilizer ordinance. And those will come back to the commission for second reading at the end of May. So if you're interested in reading those, I'd suggest going to the website. You can read the language. And then if you have any recommendations or suggested changes, please send it to us. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'm going to pass this off to the planning department. David Snow is here with representatives from Curtis and Rogers to talk a little bit about the Southwest Street Tree Master Plan, or is it treescape? David, anyway, you can describe it further.
No, that was pretty good, Alan. Thank you. So yes, so this is a presentation regarding the Southwest Street Tree Master Plan. This is a process that started in 2019. We've been working with Curtis and Rogers Design Studio on essentially creating a tree master plan for the southwest portion of the city. This is roughly a 6.7 square mile area that incorporates roughly 13 neighborhoods. So it's quite a substantial area that we're studying through this process. But you know, it has a very heavy resiliency aspect to it, which we're really excited to share with this group today. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Jenny Rogers, who's going to go through the presentation now. So and again, thank you all for your time today. Jenny, go ahead.
There we go. Hi, I'm Jenny Rogers, and I'm with Curtis and Rogers Design Studios, as David said. And we have been working with a team on this project Also involved is eSciences, BCC Engineering, and Local Office for Landscape and Urban Design, or LOLA. And as David said, we've been doing this for a while, but I'm going to give you just sort of a very brief overview of what we've been doing. This is the project area, so you have some idea of the 13 different neighborhoods that we've been dealing with. Basically, everything south from West Flagler Street to US 1 and from the river to Douglas Road. One of the things we've been doing as a part of this is community outreach, and we've also been, trying to do some education on stuff that I'm pretty sure most of the people on this board are pretty aware of, about the benefits of trees towards reducing carbon emissions and fighting pollution, stormwater management, and temperature reduction in particular. So on the left there, you can see some of the goals that we had for the master plan and how they relate to resiliency. So it's specifically looking at not just, how can we get trees, but how can we get more trees in the right of ways to help with resiliency and connectivity and things like that, in terms of giving people, shaded walking and cycling routes, so that people are more likely to, use those methods than getting in their cars. So there are a lot of things that this project can touch upon in terms of that. One of the things we're looking at in particular is how we can use green infrastructure to help with the stormwater master plan. So we know that that green infrastructure can greatly reduce the amount of flows that are going into our gray infrastructure that we currently have, or that we are working on redoing as a part of the master plan. So again, green infrastructure doesn't replace that, but it can greatly offset and be a benefit to those things. As I said, we've been doing some community outreach. We unfortunately had to do it virtually and did not get a great turnout, so we're reaching out in other ways now. But there is a website up that has more information about this as well, and we're continuing to reach out to the public to try to get more input from the homeowners and the neighborhoods about how this is going to affect them. One of the things then in our study that we found, which didn't surprise us, is about how the heat island effect is greatly affected by the number of trees. You can see here this mapping, you can see the red is the hotter temperatures. The green is the actual canopy coverage in the right of way only, mind you, within the project area. And you can see how much the red is in the areas where we have very little canopy. So there's definitely a correlation between the two, and it's just getting hotter. One of the things we did was that we did a complete inventory of all of the trees within the area. So eSciences went out and did all of the street trees and assessed them. So we have them by size and species and condition. So this is a great asset for the city as we move ahead as well, to have all of that inventory. What it showed us is that we still have a long way to go before we get to what we would like to call an ideal amount of tree canopy in the right of way. We also did hydrology mapping, and Walter Meyer from LOLA was key on this. We looked at a couple of things. This is sort of just in sort of the topographical hydrology of the area, where we have sort of lower areas and more likely to have, water problems from our FEMA maps. And he also did a more in-depth study with LIDAR, looking at also like the water flows and the regions, the areas that are the lowest points and most likely to accumulate water. What this ended up with is sort of mapping of our area here, where we found sort of key, those sort of light blue areas, and the blue lines are key towards our watershed points. So interventions in these areas are going to help the entire area as a whole, because all the water is sort of going towards those locations. So we're looking at places where we can do sort of more pinpointed interventions to help with the water flow. There's also here suggestions of green streets as well. The green streets are the green dots, and you can see they sort of go together in ways. This is green streets in terms of hydrology and helping with hydrology. We've also looked at green streets in terms of walkability as well. So we looked also at a lot of demographics and statistics to see about where the most vulnerable populations were, which we consider those to be the children and the elderly, who are most vulnerable to the effects of heat. And we sort of put those statistics together, and you can see here, these are what we call the hot spots. The darker red areas are the areas where we have more people of vulnerability. And as we can see, what happens when we overlay these two is that the more vulnerable populations tend to be in the areas with the least amount of canopy. So now we are looking at, as part of this project, our next step is to develop pilot projects. So we're looking at places that we can go and do some actual interventions in terms of green and or blue streets that might happen. And we're taking all of this information and overlaying it. And we've just started now to get some information from the Stormwater Master Plan about potential areas as well. You can see those sort of color shaded areas are areas of Stormwater Master Plan potential project areas. So we want to take a look at coordinating these pilot projects with projects that they are also undergoing. Again, we're at about 14.5% canopy coverage, and we want to get to up to 40% would be ideal. So we have a long way to go in terms of the city and its right of way and using it to its greatest advantage. One of the things we were also looking at is, if we're talking about canopy in the right of way, we want to keep canopy in the right of way, but we want to keep canopy in the right of way that's going to be healthy canopy. We don't want to cause more maintenance problems for the city. Currently, we have a lot of trees that are causing maintenance problems because they're planted in too small conditions, like the ones on the left here, or they're underneath power lines, like the ones on the right. So these are planting, specifications that we are going over with the city to try to make sure that these kinds of things don't happen, don't continue to happen, and also ways that we can make these conditions better for the city as they go forward, which aren't just removing the trees, because we don't want to be removing the canopy that we already have unless we have to. So this is just sort of an example of, when you're planting a tree in the right place or the wrong place. The left is sort of a big tree in too small a space, and the kinds of problems that causes, which cost the city money. Okay, money and time, and it's a nuisance to people because it's, tripping hazards, things like that. So it's the big tree in the small space is going to be causing the sidewalks to need a lot of repair and the roadways to need a lot of repair. So we want to make sure we're putting big trees in big spaces. And if we aren't putting them in big spaces, we need to be including the infrastructure, which does exist, but the correct infrastructure around them to keep them from heaving the sidewalks around them. This is an example of some of those infrastructures that are available. So there's structural soil or soil cells, which can be placed under the sidewalks or the roadway or the swale itself to help stabilize it for cars to park on top of it, and also to provide greater stormwater retention as well. Some of these can really be used to aid with stormwater retention, but they also give the trees roots places to grow so that they are not going to be knocking up the sidewalks again. So a little more cost up front, but saving on long-term costs of maintenance. Just an example here of looking at an average street and how we might be able to get more shade on that street. On a street like this, where we have on-street parking, it is likely that you would need more of the infrastructure like we were talking about, the structural soil or the silvacells, in order to get proper planting material space for larger trees. But we could increase the amount of shade by up to 15% on an average street without significantly affecting the amount of parking that's going on. And we know parking is a very big issue. We don't want to mess with the parking. We just want to get more trees. Again, we've been looking at those vulnerabilities, and we know that there are some areas in particular within our project area that are very vulnerable to these rain events and flooding. And we want to work on these pilot projects in those areas to see how our green infrastructure can help supplement the gray infrastructure. As a part of the plan, I'm not going to go through all of this, but we have some different ideas about like different options and different price points, basically, for different types of options for interventions, whether it's a green street, a blue street, a floodplain, or using the buildings as water collection. So there are a lot of different ways that we can sort of offset some of the water that's going into our stormwater system. And one of the things that our pilot project is looking at is not trying to do a gigantic intervention, but looking at very focused interventions. Like this one is just an example of a very specific spot in the street that floods, and going in with porous asphalt blocks in that space. And since that's the space where the water gathers, the intervention happens in that one little location, and it can greatly help the entire system. This type of porous asphalt intervention, we've looked at, like, people complain because they're like, oh, maintenance, so there is a little bit more maintenance with it, although even without maintenance, the system is still very functional. It just doesn't function at as high a level, but it does just require some type of routine maintenance 2 times a year with these sort of vacuum trucks, and maybe a deep cleaning every 5 years. So there is some cost associated with that as well. But those are just sort of some of the highlights of what we're looking at here. And again, we're looking for more input from the public, and as we move forward, and from this forum as well. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. And we do have another discussion to talk about the greenhouse gas reduction plan. So I would like to open up if you have any questions specifically about the presentation we just had of the Southwest Tree Master Plan. I did see there's some questions in the chat box, but
yeah, I think 2 hands that we have that seem specifically related to this were Jeanette and Deborah. So I'm going to allow Jeanette to speak first if it's related to this presentation. If not, we're going to have you hold off. Oops, that was the wrong post. Oh, no, I think that was correct. Jeanette?
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. It is related. I just wanted to note 2 things. Is there any way we can access this presentation that you just gave? It was fantastic. Thank you.
I don't know about this one specifically, David. Do we have some of the other presentations up on the website yet?
Yeah. So this presentation specifically may not be there, but most of them are very, very similar. But on our website, on the planning's website, under our project information, where this project is identified, there is a link for the presentation. So you should be able to access them there.
David, if you have a link, we have a Q&A box and you can paste it in there. That would be super helpful.
Perfect. I will do that.
Thank you, David. Okay, and next we have Deborah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. We've been asking, I live on the Upper East Side, and for years we had been asking FDOT to put in some landscape medians on Biscayne Boulevard, like say from about Northeast 51st Street up to Northeast 77th Street, or up to almost Northeast 79th Street. Because that area is very hot, very bare. We have a lot of stores and businesses that are trying to survive there, but to walk on Biscayne Boulevard in that area is really, really difficult. I mean, you're battered by the wind and the heat, and there's very little shade. And we've begged them, implored, please, please, please give us trees. So I'm going to just add here another plea. I don't know what it takes for FDOT to put medians. yesterday I came down from Aventura. I drove down from Aventura, North Miami, down Dixie Highway, and you know, coming further south. And I noticed that, like in North Miami, my goodness, have they put up a lot of trees. You know, it's been transformed from what it was years ago, and it looks so attractive, and it's so much more pleasant. And I'm thinking, you know, why can't we get this on Biscayne Boulevard when we've been asking them for this for years? So I do hope that somehow or other, you know, this request will be noted and some additional pressure might be brought to bear because we really need that shade in this area.
Thanks, Deborah.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to acknowledge your request. And as we engage with FDOT, I'll make sure that we try and bring that up to them and see if we can help in getting some support for your request.
Okay, and we have one last question. There's two questions, but they're kind of related. One of them was, how was this area singled out for intervention? And then tied to that, are there plans to recreate this for other parts of the city or the entire city? And how much effort would it take to expand this type of initiative to other parts of the city? So first was how this was chosen, and then is there a plan to kind of scale this?
The area was selected because it was identified as the greatest area of need in the city of Miami, the area that lacked the most tree canopy in the city, so that it was identified that way. Regarding the second question about other future opportunities for other parts of the city, absolutely. I think this is, we're kind of scratching the surface with this master plan, and we're hoping that what we learn from the master plan and the different concepts and ideas will be shared through other parts of the city. Yes, we are looking to expand this in the future.
Thanks very much, David. And given the time, what I'd like to do is thank both Jenny and David for participating today. But now let's shift over to Alyssa. If you could talk about the greenhouse gas reduction plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we actually have Josh Lathan from AECOM here on the call. So I'm going to actually pitch it over to him to kind of do a walkthrough of the draft document that we released last Thursday on Earth Day. But just to provide some context for where we're at, for those who have not been hyper involved, on Thursday, April 22nd, Earth Day, we released a draft version of Miami's greenhouse gas reduction plan called Miami Forever Carbon Neutral. It maps out the city's kind of roadmap to carbon neutrality by 2050, but more specifically, a 2035 interim goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to 60% below 2018 levels. So this document has, you know, a number of parts. And so I'm going to just from here hand it over to Josh to give everyone kind of an orientation. We have public comment that's open. So just hopefully with this, you'll be able to see where you think that you want to focus kind of most of your efforts. It is a little bit lengthy at, you know, roughly 60 pages, but that will be open for the next 60 days. And of course, the city staff is here to answer any questions you have about this document. So handing it over to Josh Lathan from AECOM now.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. And can you see my screen, Alyssa?
We can, but if you could zoom in a little on the document, that would be great.
Yeah. Sure.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks, Alyssa. So like Alyssa said, my name is Josh Lathan. I'm the City Climate Action Plan lead at AECOM, and I led our team's collaboration with the City of Miami and C40 cities to develop the Miami Forever Carbon Neutral Plan. I've been helping cities in their greenhouse gas analyses and climate action planning activities for about 13 years now, including extensive work throughout California, including LA, Long Beach, Silicon Valley, and a number of smaller cities and counties, as well as in Honolulu, Chicago, New England, and the mid-Atlantic states, as well as recently in Latin America, in Mexico City, Quito, Medellin, and Bogota. During that time, the technical approach to greenhouse gas planning has evolved as new technologies have come to the forefront and cities' greenhouse gas targets have become increasingly ambitious. One constant, though, has been in the need to balance aggressive action in response to this global challenge with the limitations of a local government's direct control. The enormity of the problem requires a multi-pronged solution that mixes direct local action with collaborative partnerships and advocacy and helps set the stage for grassroots implementation throughout the community. Miami's plan, therefore, was developed within this framework. We reviewed the greenhouse gas emissions inventory to understand where the city's emissions are coming from and evaluated what opportunities the city has to directly influence those emission sources, as well as identify where collaboration is needed or reliance on outside actors is needed to really move the needle in certain areas. The city is a member of C40 Cities, which is a nonprofit organization that helps the world's largest cities take meaningful action to address climate change. C40 provides their members with a suite of technical resources, as well as guidance documents about how we should approach climate action planning at the local level, as well as access to their technical staff to share ideas about lessons learned within the network so we can all advance on this challenge together without constantly reinventing the wheel. All cities are unique in their specific challenges and opportunities, but all cities face challenges when developing a response to climate change, and it's within those commonalities of obstacles that C40 and the AECOM team helped to frame Miami's path forward. So for those who have not yet reviewed the draft plan, I'm going to take a few minutes to give a high-level tour of its organization and contents. And I'm sharing my screen now, and I'll scroll through the document too for those who are on your computer. So the plan, let me catch up. The plan is organized around 5 primary goal areas using the acronym GREEN. So that includes getting around Miami, renewable energy, electric vehicles, energy efficiency, and new economy. In the introduction, the plan sets the stage for action and describes the city's greenhouse gas reduction commitments, key actions the city has already taken to date, how the plan relates to a green economy and local economic development, how the plan addresses climate justice, and then what stakeholder engagement contributed to plan development. Oops. I'm just going to quickly scroll through to, then in chapter 2, the plan provides a primer on greenhouse gas emissions, and it's written in a way to be accessible to the general public and people who have not been following this topic in great detail, like I know some of you have. It presents the city's base year greenhouse gas inventory. It describes emissions forecasting, the process and the results. And it then talks about the city's 2 greenhouse gas targets, net carbon neutrality by 2050 and an interim target of 60% reductions below 2018 levels by the year 2035. This interim target was selected based on an evaluation of what greenhouse gas reductions are possible in the city if we take aggressive action immediately. It was then reviewed and vetted by various city departments, including a review of the sub-goals that would apply to each department. And finally, it was discussed and revised with input from, revised with input from C40 staff to ensure that the interim target meets the requirements of the C40 climate action planning framework that Miami has signed onto. Chapter 3 is then really the bulk of the plan. It's where the city's 5 goals are introduced along with several sub-goals and the actions designed to achieve those goals. The chapter also describes the action prioritization process that we use to identify 18 priority actions that will be further developed after the public review period ends. This process of prioritization included an evaluation of different action impacts, including co-benefits like public health and climate justice, as well as considering implementation feasibility. Within this chapter, let me catch up. Within this chapter, each goal is introduced separately. Here we go. So each goal is introduced separately with a little bit of an introduction, and then is followed by its corresponding actions summarized in a table. Within that table, actions that are highlighted in green represent the prioritized actions from the plan, and those that have dollar symbols denote green economy opportunities. I would also note that while the plan does include a new economy goal, the specific goal and action language for that topic are currently being finalized and will be incorporated into the final plan itself. I'm going to quickly scroll through chapter 3 because it's quite long. Then it has chapter 4, the final chapter, and that provides a monitoring framework for the city's overall greenhouse gas targets, as well as the individual plan goals. And it specifies how often the city will prepare new greenhouse gas inventories to track progress, how plan updates will occur, and how public communication channels will be maintained to support plan implementation. This chapter also includes a section describing the emissions estimated to remain by 2050 after full plan implementation. So as I mentioned earlier, the city has set a net carbon neutrality target, and that means any emissions that cannot be reduced locally through plan actions will be balanced or canceled out in other ways. This section mentions 3 potential options that the city can monitor and evaluate as the 2050 target year comes into sharper focus. That includes things like facilitating natural carbon sequestration, pursuing industrial carbon capture and storage, or buying carbon offsets from a verified global marketplace. Between now and the 2050 target year, other options may also come into existence, may be potential options for the city to consider. And then finally, I would note that the plan also has 4 technical appendices. Some of those have been provided in this draft, and others will follow the public comment period. But these appendices include a green economy report, further details and results on the action evaluation process that I described earlier in chapter 2, an implementation roadmap for the prioritized actions that will be developed following the public comment period once we have confirmed and finalized what those prioritized actions are. And then lastly, Appendix D, which will include documentation of the information and assumptions used in the greenhouse gas calculator that was developed by C40 cities. So I think in the interest of time, I'll turn it back to Alyssa right here.
Thanks so much, Josh, for giving us that walkthrough. And I'm just trying to unshare. There we go. Okay, great. So we already have a few questions thrown in the Q&A. The first one we were definitely expecting, so I'll pitch this one to Alan, but is how will the recent passage of SB 1128 impact this this plan?
Yes. Okay. So I'd like to talk about the Senate Bill 1128, and there was a couple other ones dealing with energy infrastructure. Back on March 11th, the mayor sponsored resolutions opposing Senate Bill 1128, and the commission did adopt that, and it was forwarded. So the mayor has weighed in on it. Now, how does it affect us? If you read through the legislation, it has 2 parts on it, and we're watching closely as to what will finally be approved if it does pass. But it restricts or prohibits, or has the effect of restricting or prohibiting types of fuel sources of energy production which may be used to serve customers or such entities that are authorized to serve. So it says that we really, if it gets passed, we can't have an all-out ban on certain things. However, later on in the legislation, it says that it does not prevent the board of a municipality or government entity which owns or operates and directly controls an electric or natural gas utility from passing rules, regulations, or policies governing utility, which means that we still have the ability to work with utility companies to come up with smart policies and how we work with any utility provider. Okay, so I would say that it does make things a little bit more challenging from us, as we can't direct as much as we would like to achieve our goals. We still have a lot of flexibility, and both FP&L and the other utility providers, the natural gas companies, have come to us saying that they would rather partner with us on helping us to achieve our goals than to fighting over it. And I think you will see at the end of the day, they will be very willing partners to support what we're all trying to achieve here. So yes, we don't like that when the state government tells us how to do business and what we can and can't do, the preemption part on it. But at least here in the discussion we've had, I think that there is room to partner better with them and ultimately achieve our goals.
Sorry, I was typing there. Great. And then next we had from Albert Gomez. I'm just going to read what he wrote here. He recently submitted a draft permeable pavement ordinance. This is kind of related to stormwater master plan, to both the City of Miami Commission and County Commissioners in an attempt to require permeable pavement in new construction or rehab construction. How does City of Miami feel about implementing a permeable pavement ordinance given stated goals about reducing stormwater entering the stormwater system?
Okay. And this is something Albert and I have talked about a couple times. And the whole purpose of permeable pavement material is to allow for water to drain naturally in the soil. So it doesn't get into the stormwater system and carry pollutants to the bay. And so I don't think having a permanent pavement system requirement everywhere will make sense for us, because you have to look at the loading on the road, the cost of maintenance and the cost of putting it in place. But to be honest with you, right now, we don't know enough about it. So we are doing more research, talking to some companies that work more with the material to understand how well it works. I don't want to build a road with the pavement material, have it fail in 3 or 4 years because the road loading is too bad. But where there are places where we can use it and it's going to help us with our stormwater goals, we absolutely want to take advantage of materials like this. So I would say for Albert, give us a little bit more time to research. And I think that ultimately that can be part of the solution. I don't know if it will be 100% of the solution at this time.
Great. And then next in the chat, I'm gonna, Mihai has questions. He also has his hand raised. So I hope if I am reading his question that will be sufficient. But if not, you can keep your hand raised, Mihai, and we'll come back to you. So I think this applies to both climate resilience on the adaptation side and the mitigation side. So I think we might have 2 different answers here. It's a 3-part question, just saying when we are doing climate resilience planning, what is considered a worst case scenario for the city? So what kind of, what metric are we using for our kind of worst case scenario, or, you know, cost of inaction or anything like that? And then the specific question was, do you factor in the precautionary principle? So maybe we want to start with the stormwater master plan on that one.
Okay, so as far as sea level rise projections, the City of Miami has adopted the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact's projection, which says that we will be somewhere between the IPCC median and the NOAA intermediate high models. And really, what does that mean? That shows that we will expect, and we are designing for, anywhere from 21 to 40 inches of sea level rise by year 2070. And as you look at our stormwater master plan, the planning curves use that general type of increase and looks at 2 specific points at a 15-inch and a 30-inch sea level rise level. But everything is based on the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact projection.
And yep, Josh, I don't know if you want to add in anything for when it comes to.
Yeah, it's not directly related to the mitigation side of the equation. It's more to adaptation and resilience. But question 2, talking about the worst case scenario, I guess that would overlap with the target setting framework that C40 has defined for its cities, and their efforts through their deadline 2020 planning process was to help C40 member cities define targets that were consistent with avoiding the 1.5 degree temperature rise scenario. So I can't remember all of the specifics within the deadline 2020 framework, but it talks about what the total emissions budget for C40 cities would be at the time when that plan was developed. It equates that to a per capita target for different C40 cities. And I believe that per capita language is referenced in the draft plan right now. And then it also looks at different reduction trajectories for different city types. I think that's the closest corresponding answer I have to that.
No, that's great. Thank you. Another question we have, I'm actually, oh, he had his hand raised, but Michael Clarkson is here. He is asking, how will this plan encourage city government to cut CO2 emissions of in government operations, as well as employees traveling to and from work? I don't know if you want to start, Alan, and then I can fill in.
Okay, and Alyssa can probably talk smarter about the specific actions, but it does have, the plan overall has two components. One is looking at citywide operations, everything we do in the city, and there are actions that are specifically directed towards what the city will do, as far as how we will need to modify our buildings, how we need to transform our transportation fleet. We run all the trolleys in the city. We have thousands of vehicles that we operate between the police, fire, all the workers that we have out there. And so you'll see a lot of actions in there so that we're doing our part just as much as we're asking the public to do theirs. And Alyssa, I don't know if you have any specific actions you'd like to highlight as far as city responses to get our part down.
Right. So one of the biggest things that we're looking into, and this will be kind of one of our main actions coming out of this plan, is working to green the city's fleet and coming up with procurement protocols and a transition to electric vehicles for the city of Miami's fleet. That's including light duty vehicles, some of the equipment that's used at the parks, and the trolley system by 2035. So that's going to be a major component of the city's greening its emissions. When it comes to Michael Clarkson specifically asking about city employee commute, I think one thing that we've learned through COVID is that we can really leverage this work from home setup more regularly to benefit kind of the quality of life of city employees, but also to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So you know, I can't speak on behalf of the administration or anything, but I do see that, you know, that a lot of people are embracing this within the city. And another thing that we have recommended in the plan is looking into working with the human resources division of the city to potentially increase incentives for city employees to use public transit and or consider putting a cost on, or some sort of cost of parking at the city for employees, which would be a way to discourage parking and very unpopular, but it is a mechanism that does encourage behavior change. So that's just a recommendation. And then when it comes to the buildings, we've also are working on BE 305, which will help our cities our city buildings benchmark their energy use, and therefore start working towards reducing energy use. So that way we handle both the transportation from city operations and the building city operations emissions. Okay, and then we have a next question from Maya Cruz. What are the different ways that the community can weigh in on greenhouse gas inventory strategy outside of submitting comments? I will start with saying that our preferred method of receiving comment is definitely the form that we have set up. I do also understand that it is a bit, it speaks kind of more to people who have the understanding of the climate science and more to our advocacy community than perhaps the more day-to-day person, even though we try to keep it as open-ended as possible. This is somewhat of a technical document. So other ways to that we are going to be soliciting for feedback is, one, anyone with a general comment can reach out to us at resilience@miamigov.com with just any kind of general feedback. Another thing that we're planning to do is specific stakeholder meetings in Overtown and Liberty City to try and target individuals in those communities, and really bringing the climate conversation down to a hyper-local level that they can opine on and give us feedback that is useful to both of us. The mayor's office has recommended that we also do a mailer to those communities. So we're going to be working with the mayor's office to put out mail to go collect comment. And then besides that, just continuing to socialize on social media to push people to respond to the form or send us email comments, and just using all of those all those levers. But if there's any other ways that we can be soliciting feedback, we're definitely open to suggestions on that front. We're kind of figuring out exactly the timing and dates of a lot of these initiatives now. So if anything, there's any recommendations of specific groups that would like to have a meeting or anything, we're definitely open to hearing that. I don't know if any other thoughts on that one. Okay. Another question we have is, another ask for another link to the street tree master plan document. And then related to that, is there a heat island or heat map for the entire city that can be shared? What other information does the city have on heat islands? I don't know if someone wants to take that, and then I can join in while I answer some questions.
I would say we have been doing it. Was it last spring? I can't remember exactly when. Working with CAPA, we did do a heat island study. I would also say we're working with the Extreme Heat Alliance to come up with ways to deal with it, and some other initiatives that aren't quite ready for releasing yet, but may have some potential. But we are looking at that, and I don't know if the heat island map is posted on the website, but we can get it posted so people can see what it says.
Yeah, for the heat island map that we worked on with Kappa Strategies last summer, the goal is to have it, released sometime in the next year. The challenge that we had was that we were not able to ground truth the information that was collected in that citywide heat study. So we're a little bit hesitant to publish the information before we've had a chance to formally review it. So yes, there is a citywide heat map, but it is still unofficial. So we'll keep you all posted when that information does become available to be shared publicly. And there were actually, Melissa, great point. FIU did help us develop some heat maps, but they are surface heat maps. So, and they're by neighborhood. So if there's a specific neighborhood, we can look at the ground temperature heat maps that FIU helped us create. This was in 2019, I believe.
And Christian posted that the county's heat inland map is posted online also. So that's another resource people can look at. Oh, not hearing you, Alyssa.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, I'm going to now pivot over to Mihai. I was just going through all the questions in the chat. Go ahead, Mihai. I see all your hands up.
Actually, Mihai, on behalf of the Miami chapter of Extinction Rebellion America, asked me to speak on their chapter's behalf. I am a member of Extinction Rebellion America myself. I live in Florida. I was in Miami last Thursday at the Lincoln, I think, Avenue Promenade in that part of Miami Beach. Beautiful, beautiful part of the city. The part of the question that I asked that Alyssa read out about the precautionary principle was the part that kind of fell through the cracks in the responses. So I'd like to revisit it. Just briefly, the precautionary principle says that no matter how bad or unlikely the worst case scenario may seem, if the results of that worst case scenario coming true are catastrophic, then you need to plan for that in advance. And I've spent the last 5 years and continuing doing doctoral level research in climate crisis, sixth mass extinction, et cetera, et cetera. And what I've observed, and many of my colleagues have confirmed this and agree with me, when you look at the trends of what's happening in the data, not just the data snapshot taken at a particular point in time, but you look at the trends in the data over time, they're not getting better. 1.5 degrees centigrade, that's yesterday's goal. It's in the rearview mirror. 2 degrees is now most likely widespread consensus in the scientific community. 2 degrees is now most likely within a decade, 2 at most. A blue ocean event that's going to be a tipping point that is going to turn that measurement of ocean rise at 1.5 from inches to feet to meters by 2050, 2060, 2070. Now, however unlikely you think those cases may be, I think it is unwise, to put it mildly, I think it's unwise to not invoke and engage in the precautionary principle reasoning here. What if those worst case scenarios are what actually starts happening 10 years from now, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, so that by 2050, you're looking at 8 feet, 12 feet, 15, 20 feet of sea level rise in Miami because of things like the blue ocean event and its albedo effect. I think, Josh, you know surely what I'm talking about, right? And probably you all do. So
we have a few questions lined up. So if you could
all right, I'll wrap it up.
Question. Thank you.
My question comes to this. If you're going to tell the truth to people who live in Miami about what you're trying to do with your resilience work, which I applaud, you have to tell them the whole truth. Why aren't you telling them the worst case scenario possibilities? I know they're terrifying, but I'd rather be terrified knowing it's coming than be terrified when it's happening. So my question is, I don't see you telling those worst case scenario possibilities. Are they too much doom for you? I'm just curious.
All right, thank you. I'll let Alan respond to that one.
I think that, as I said, we are trying to take a balanced approach in looking at different sea level rise scenarios. And we have, when it comes to sea level rise, we believe that the most likely and what we need to plan for is the Southeast Florida Climate Compact model, which is 21 to 40 inches of sea level rise by 2070. That's what we are planning for. That is what we are doing. And some people may not agree with that. They believe that there may be more, but that's the official City of Miami position as to what we need to take into account.
We have another question that says something along the lines of, you know, the phrasing is, who is the underwriting the action plan? But I think it's just, where does the funding for this initiative come from? So I don't know if you want to take that one, Alan.
No, okay, so as part of our annual budget, we fund certain activities. Last year in our budget, I can't remember how much the contract was for any, that doesn't matter the exact amount, but we put in our budget to do a greenhouse gas reduction plan. And so it's part of our regular general funded budget for the year to do this study. As part of next year's budget, in that same way, under our department budget submission, we are asking for funds to do a greenhouse gas emission inventory again. And we'll be doing that every other year. And then every 5 years, we'll be updating this plan. And that all comes under regular general funds within the city. That is part of our department's budget. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, again, mention that we will be doing greenhouse gas inventories every other year. So right now, the next one would be for the year 2020. And that is a requirement of C40 cities. And then another requirement of this greenhouse gas plan is that we do updates every 5 years to just review the goals that we have stated, make sure that we're still online, on track, and that the actions that we have prescribed for ourselves are sufficient. And if we can increase any actions or need to adjust anything to make sure that we do reach our interim 2035 goal. So those are just general requirements for the city. And yes, Mihai's asking if we read your open letter. We did. I sent you an email with some responses to some of your open letter comments. So please know that we did see it. And I think I just want to add in again that the greenhouse gas plan is open for public comment through May 23rd. The website is www.miamigov.com/GHG You can use the form that we have on the website to walk through the document and give comments on a section by section basis. And then we'll be reviewing those, going through the comments, doing any updates, and releasing a final version of the plan sometime in the summer of 2021. When we release that document, at that time, we also intend for the document to have been reviewed and certified by C40 cities for 30 criteria that prove that it is in alignment with the Paris Climate Agreement. So that is one level of kind of a third-party review of the document to make sure that it is going to hit the goals that we would like for it to hit. And so with that, I think we have time for one more Mihai. And so it's quick. So I'm gonna just pick one of them to speak. Go ahead. Last comment.
Yes, hello everybody. Yes, can you hear me? Yes, my name is Mihai. I'm with Parents for Future Miami. And I put a lot of work, and we worked a lot to put this open letter together that has a lot of questions. And I would like to share this open letter with all the attendants here. You can go to bit.ly/Earth Day Open Letter. And there you will find, or you can go to the Twitter account of Parents for Future Miami, and you're gonna see it at the top. There's a link to our open letter, and there are many questions there for Mr. Dodd, for Mayor Suarez, for Josh from ACOM also. So there are a lot of open questions that we would really like to know the answer to, because our future depends on those answers. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you too.
Okay, and we are at 4 o'clock. I would like to, even though we may not, everybody in this forum may not agree on everything, the fact that you are here today and you have been involved is sincerely appreciated by us. And a lot of the comments that you have do help us to shape what we say and what we do. So even though it's an adventure of exploration, trying to get to the right solution, knowing that the future may change, will change, and we are all trying to do our best. But from me to you, I'd just like to say thank you for being part of this, challenging us, for giving some really great recommendations that are part of the plan, and for continuing the conversation, getting more people involved in it. Ultimately, it takes a lot of little baby steps to get to where we need to go, but I think we're on the right path. So I'd like to just leave it at that. And Mihai in particular, who is part of a very, very passionate group of people who have been part of the discussion from the beginning. Thank you for all of your involvement. And with that, I think we're at 4 o'clock, so we'll end it here. And hopefully I'll see you all again next month.
Thank you.